We'll get going. So welcome to Pushing the Boundaries of Public Sector Innovation. This is our second to last session, which is kind of shocking to me how quickly these conversations have gone by. We're so excited to have Justin Entzminger here, as well as Orlando Rojas, to share their stories and experiences with networking, field building, capacity building, mobilization work in their experiences. So really looking forward to hearing from both of them shortly. This is the series focused on what's working-ish, where we've talked about evaluation and some sort of topics that have emerged as we're learning about what's working in the field and trying to gather up some of that and share that with each other. So there are some really great, amazing stories of working across individual innovation initiatives in different ways, and it's obviously a key part of pushing the boundaries of practices, learning more from one another. We know more together than we do on our own, and I'm here with some other colleagues in Montreal who are sharing how much we rely on each other when things get rough, to know that we've got people to go to help us navigate some challenging situations when those come. So that's all part of our conversation today. We're really happy that you're here to join us. So this is our hosting team. Francisca and I have been hosting this What's Working-ish series. Stefan is here today too, who hosted the earlier series focused on theories of change, and we'll be hearing from him a little bit at the end today. Pavan's here as well, holding down all the back end as she does. And then we've got Lily here too, joining us as one of our hosts. Penny is hopefully still sleeping because it's very early where she is. And so this is our team. We have one more, as I said, we're nearing the end of this journey of our series of conversations. And our last session is, today is our second last. Our last session is coming up in about 2 weeks, and it's focused on courage, where the co-hosting team will come back together and reflect on what we've been noticing about this experience of being in dialogue with one another. Pavan's got so that's our process map and where we are. On the next slide are, I think, a bunch of links about where to go to find out more about the project, look at the past recordings. We've now seen kind of the full body of work. There's a really interesting threads that are coming and showing up in between across the different sessions. So it's interesting to go back to them if you, even if you were here, to listen to them again and to make some connections across. You can also find more information about the project on our website, and there's some writing about works and thinking and process that's on Medium as well. And we invite anyone who would like to join us in the writing in the Medium space, if that's something that is interesting for you. Go to the next slide, Pavan. So as I said, here we are. We talked about codifying and shape-shifting, evaluation and mobilizing. Today, kind of our orienting question. We're going to explore much broader terrain than just this, but the question that is focusing us is, why are networks serving organizations important for elevating our individual and collective practice and field? So that's we'd like to invite Justin into the space to kick us off with some stories from your work. And I'll hand it over to you from here to introduce yourself as you wish, and share some thoughts and reflections on your practice. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Lindsay. And it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that has gone into this structure, and the welcome into this space. Also, thrilled that the last and final session is about courage. I think that's really appropriate. I'll go ahead and hop in, and if I can move to the next slide, please. So wanted to do a bit of table setting here to talk about one of the larger programs at the Bloomberg Center for Public Innovation, where I'm the Innovation Practice Director. For a little bit of background before this, I was the Innovation Director for the city of Memphis in Tennessee. So one of the lighter blue dots in the middle of your screen. And before that, was a part of the innovation team doing other work. So worked in that capacity in total about 8.5, 9 years, and then came to BCPI to lead the innovation practice. And in that previous work, and honestly, one of the top three reasons I would say that I stayed in this space, if not still in the public sector, was because of the network, and the ways in which doing this work was strengthened and inspired by both formal networks that came from being a part of the innovation team cohort and series of cohorts, but also some ad hoc groups that we stood up. Liana and I were both a part of what we called SOCO, which some folks may think of as Southern Comfort, but was actually the Southern cohort for innovation cities, basically innovation cities in the South of the US who were dealing with very conservative and preemptive state governments, but working in cities where the state structures, in my example, Tennessee, were having a really challenging impact on doing people-centered work in a majority Black city in Memphis. Liana was doing similar work in New Orleans, and we had about a dozen folks in that cohort. That was something we really just activated on the other side of COVID and on the other side of the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others. So that's a bit of a table set, but we wouldn't have any of those connections to have built that without sort of the catalytic moment that was iTeam investment. So to share a bit about that, we that is a program that is now still funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies, but run by BCPI. To date, though this is about to be old data, but as of this moment, there are 53 cities across 8 countries that have been funded to have iTeams since 2011. We're in the process of launching this year 28 more cities. So we're basically doubling what's been done in 13 years and doing it in 1 year. So very exciting times here in terms of scale and opportunities to further mobilize. Those teams have launched a number of projects because they're coached in part to take a portfolio approach to the main challenges they're taking on, and have seen local and national investment in the ideas and interventions that they launch. And 90% of cities continue funding for innovation capacity after grants ended. I think that what that looks like, and as Lindsay well knows, and Lee well knows, and Liana well know because of some innovation research we did together, that looks very different depending on the city. But that over 13 years, sort of there's a spectrum of typologies around what lasting capacity looks like. And I'll go into that a little bit more. So if we could skip to the next slide, please. Over that time, these innovation teams have taken on a wide range of challenges, and the spectrum's pretty different. I would say that where I think the local context will determine to some degree how much work in any of these one areas is particularly valued in terms of sustaining the capacity. But I will also share that the middle to the left side is where Bloomberg Philanthropies has done a good bit of work in supporting collective efforts, collective action, just even calls during COVID. Many high teams became a city's response lead to the pandemic. And there was a while there where teams that are funded specifically had one call a week to learn from each other, share quick contact tracing tools or websites for public information, that sort of thing. But there was also another call each week with a broader group of innovation folks at a global level. And those were really crucial to moving the work forward. Our latest 25 of the 28 I teams that are launching this year are working for the first time ever on the same challenge, which is the intersection of climate vulnerability and wealth equity, particularly Black wealth equity. And so the systemic change element there is a place where by having 25 cities in the US all working on the same challenge for the first time, we're hoping to see real opportunities for both movement and replication. And I'll show some of this on the next couple of slides. There have been smaller groups within each I-Team cohort that have taken on some different elements. And in some cases, they may have formed a partnership with one other city doing it to learn from each other. But those were much more informal activities and approaches to the work. We can hop to the next slide. So just some quick examples, just lifting up that Baltimore, among many cities, took the lead on crisis management and created a bunch of new jobs for folks that had trouble gaining employment, but to help with contact tracing. Durham reimagined police response. Los Angeles stood up a number of programs and policies, but in particular, My Voice LA to reduce discrimination and workplace harassment. We can hop to the next slide, just going through these real quickly. But Minneapolis, when they started, their I-Team was essentially tasked broadly with sort of equity in service and policy. And their first place they honed in on was housing issues and evictions. And so they ended up, as a part of their portfolio, change some ordinances and were able to help 90% of tenants remain in their homes. Mobile changed how code enforcement work, and Seattle changed the services provided to those experiencing homelessness, particularly young people and students, to achieve greater housing stability. So I would say, and again, Lindsay, Liana, Lee, Francisca, and Terrence, our colleague who's a public innovation fellow at Bloomberg Center for Public Innovation, we are starting to see, now that we've got 13 years of this funded work and existing relationships we can leverage and go back to, different typologies of how cities use innovation and how they think about innovation to get stuff done to improve residents' lives. But I think that the other and the questions we're starting to ask are, okay, how does that sustain? What if you did a certain type of work while on the grant, does that influence the type of work you do when the funding is gone? There are a lot of key questions that I want to unpack in the next few slides, but this was just to set the stage that we've seen a variety of activity and benefit to residents through this program. And luckily, with the robust academic support and research support of us being centered in Johns Hopkins University now, we have the ability to both take a look back and then actively study these new I-Teams to get a better sense of what scales and what sustains in terms of the way of working and how we can really create a movement that's at an institutional or systemic level. So with that, I'll hop to the next slide, please. This is sort of a summary slide, but I'll walk you through kind of the evolution to get us to where we are now and the questions that go with that. When this was I-Team programs first launched, it was the mayor's innovation delivery team. And it was very much one mayor, I believe it's the New Orleans mayor, Liana, referred to the team as like his SWAT team or something like that. But it was just very much like directed by the mayor and for all the benefit of that. And then there were obviously, as we learned, some drawbacks of that. The cities did all the recruiting. That was particularly tough in the early days because job descriptions just didn't exist in a lot of these cities for doing design work or sort of mixed methods data work or some of the more collaborative delivery. There was a playbook that was pretty much project management, how to just sort of take things through to delivery. Again, you delivered on projects as directed by the mayor. And those cities were concentrated in the Southeast and the Midwest. In 2.0, there was an expansion to a more global perspective, which allowed us now to see more models and more and learn from the different environments and city contexts. But it still was mostly, in terms of the cities that were invested in, positioned as a mayor's team. You got priorities sometimes not from the mayor, but from varying departments. City was still in charge of the HR process. Bloomberg Philanthropies launched the Path to Innovation, which was a human-centered design process to guide cities through this work. And there was a pretty significant investment in additional subject matter expertise in TA around doing design in government. Those cities, whether by sort of whether spurred by local context and necessity to get the work they were charged with doing done, there seemed to also in that later era, there seemed to be a lot of partnerships between either the city and nonprofits, cities and community-based partnerships, and in a couple cases, city and university, which is, I think, something that we're continuing to think about and explore. Towards the end of that era, there was some additional training on inclusive design and equity work, some co-creation work. And we were seeing teams, I think maybe organically, as they were ending their time on the grant, applying this in different ways. There was sort of an organic evolution and sort of development in some different directions as we started to get more and more cities that had been through this program. So now what are we thinking about? Leadership still is foundational and matters, but what we're really focused on in terms of program delivery is a few core mindsets and skill sets that we want to see, obviously, like the funded I-team folks demonstrate, but also share with and train on throughout their government partnerships. Terrence, our colleague Terrence Smith, has done amazing work, as has Liana, around trust building and how essential it is to do real generative work with community and have community see government, local government particularly, differently. Two things that we feel like were really essential, but were never stated as core to the program before in a meaningful way, were evaluation and storytelling. So how do you prove your value and how do you tell the story of your value, both of which are crucial change drivers and change management levers to scale the capacity for innovation and sustain it. And we're taking a much more deliberate approach to those two elements as we launch this next version of the program. Also, we now have, and Liana knows this very closely, very deliberate work on sustaining the practice. So each city has to come up with a plan to sustain this way of working and position it for long-term success. We also want, we have that chief innovation officers and I-team directors network. They have a few touch points, but again, because of the benefit of Johns Hopkins, we're exploring some other elements that have either been adopted by Johns Hopkins or that Johns Hopkins has launched anew, and seeing how that can be considered a more holistic collective for engaging and moving this work forward, rather than some folks are plugged into one, some folks are plugged into another, and there's not a real synthesis for how it all fits together. So that's a thing we're actively working on now. And we also are just thinking more and more about how we can do mission work outside of government, but with government. And how do we collaborate on what the mission is and define success with community or other key stakeholders. So that's, given what we've seen, that's where we're going with these next 28 cities. So some of it is, we've learned and we're moving forward, but we have some key questions. So for the last 4 minutes here, I'll touch on those. We could hop to the next slide. As I mentioned, we're really just orienting towards mindsets and skill sets. These are the mindsets that we want I-teams to bring to a city and demonstrate, and then anything we ask folks to do in the way of working and in the curriculum is tied to these. And then on the next slide, please, are the skill sets. And same thing. The I-team is actually staffed to try to fill as many of these roles as possible. And then where they don't have a dedicated person, they can either look to within the city or externally to gain that capacity. And then we also provide technical assistance and support to skill up in these 5 skills. And everything that we ask them to do work-wise is tied to these 5 skills for success. Next slide. So here are the open questions that I'm kind of wrestling with and our practice is wrestling with as we think about the future. We sit and fortunately sit at Johns Hopkins, and now with 53 cities in the past, 28 cities launching this year, we have a real opportunity to do longer term assessment of change and really see whether formal networks, organic networks, et cetera, where things have sustained, where they've evolved, how they've morphed, and get a sense of what needs to change about the program to see the most impact and change in the way of working moving forward. We also have seen plenty of cities, as mentioned before, demonstrate their value in a number of different ways. Even our training programs, which are shorter time limits, smaller investment, but even those, we see that the way of working really demonstrates value. Some of it's just around getting people to work differently in more collaborative and thoughtful ways, new ways of knowing and using data, new ways of interacting with and having generative work with community. But what else? I think one thing that we've, continued to wrestle with is do cities need, particularly in this budget crunch a lot of US cities are in right now, do they need some sort of demonstration of fiscal value or financial benefit to this way of working? And what does it take to demonstrate that? So these are open questions we have. And then lastly, fundamentally, a lot of what has been set up in terms of bureaucratic structures is around liability. And I think to have an institutional level shift, at some point, I-teams or mayors or both will need to aim towards those liability disciplines and agencies to change the way of working, and maybe not in terms of depth, but in terms of breadth in government. And so that means even though it may not be politically sexy or even politically palpable, what does it mean to take on HR structures, budgetary structures, legal structures that break down silos, that hire people to be accountable for resident impact, as opposed to guarding against liability in your day-to-day tasks. So open questions we're wrestling with, open questions that we're hoping to engage our growing I-team network with over the next year. But these are some things we're thinking about as we continue to grow our community and program and evolve from there. I'll pause there. I think that's 20 minutes.
Thank you so much, Justin. It's always such a pleasure to hear about what you're thinking about in your work and how rapidly that's changing too, and to see what's possible when you're working with this sort of duration and scale and level of intentional learning and iteration that you're doing in your network scale work. So thank you for sharing what your questions that you're holding and some context for your work. So I'll put the slide link in here again for those who joined us a little later. We will have some Q&A after we hear from Orlando, and there's some slides slides 47 and 48. So if you've got a question that you don't want to lose track of, that you want to make sure that we ask Justin after we hear from Orlando, please feel free to add those in there. And with that, I will invite Orlando to join us here. So excited to hear about where you're at with your work in Chile in this massive network scale, cross-jurisdictional learning, capacity building, connecting work that you're doing. So welcome Orlando.
Hi, thank you, Lindsay, for the presentation and also for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you, giving you some ideas of the work that we were doing here in Chile for the last 9 years. Next year, we will be celebrating our 10th anniversary. A big issue for us, obviously, to be part and to survive different governments from this different side of the spectrum. No? But well, so next one, please. So I'm talking about, first of all, a little context about what the Laboratorio Gobierno, Chile's GovLab is. Next, please. So Laboratorio Gobierno, as I mentioned before, was created in 2015 as a program for fostering public innovation in order to address complex problems in the government, in the whole state. In Chile, we have a unitary state. So everything that the central government says, it should be applied in the different regions. So that's why our LabGov is based on central government and its network applied in the different regions of Chile. So we work based on this view of public innovation as the intersection of value for citizens, feasibility within the public services, and also real impact that pushes us to measure impact, to have experimentation, and also to gather the opinions, feedback of the users. Next one, please. We are part of a complete institutional framework for the transformation of the modernization of the government of the state here in Chile that coordinates agenda, the modernization agenda of the state here that is addressed in the Ministry of Finance here in Chile. So we have this governance of public modernization of the state when we have as an advisor a council of modernization that is primarily composed of different experts outside the government. And also we have this committee of modernization of the state that is composed of different ministries, agencies, and the GovLab is one of the agencies within the Ministry of Finance next to the digital government unity and also the modernization secretariat that is like the PMO of the modernization agenda. And we are the team, like the task force of innovation. So what are our services in terms of this little context? And next one, please. We have created as an evolution of our work a value chain of services. That is our current model of services. We born in the Ministry of Economy, then in the second government of Michelle Bachelet, that was a former president of left party, and then in the second government of Sebastián Piñera, that is the former former president, and is from the right wing, we changed our organization to the Ministry of the Presidency. And then in this government, we also moved to the Ministry of Finance. But that is that was with a purpose of gathering all the institutions that are related to modernization in the Ministry of Finance, because here in Chile, it's supposed to be a better sense of a technician like institution, and also to transcend in the different governments. So right now, all the institutions related of modernization are now in Ministry of Finance. So what is our value of change? Right now, we have 3 services that connect each other. The first one is it's the yellow one, the Agile Consultancy Service. And it's primarily a service where we co-create solutions to prioritize problems with the public institutions that are mainly linked to this modernization agenda. Second one, we have the Public Innovators Network. That is the service that I'm going to go deeper in this session. And this service, it's a connection service when we put tools, digital tools, and also spaces in order to learn, to share, and to visualize what innovations and new tools and new ways of doing things are being carried out by the different services, people in Chile, but its main focus on people, not institutions. And the last service is the Public Innovation Index. In that measurement, it's a measurement of public institutions' capabilities of innovation that we created in 2019 with the help of the Inter-American Development Bank. So we create this measurement of the public institutions, mainly the central government services. Right now we are measuring 56 services. We are in the 5th measurement. And right now we are working with Peru, Colombia, Uruguay. And also we have a lot of interest within Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, and also Brazil, in order to have this index in all of those countries, and also maybe we can have a common and standardized way of measuring our services in order to share best practices and so on. Next one, please. So the other one, yeah. So how this is a chain of value, I think, or a chain of services, because we give this model to the public services that they can start to innovate in whatever service they want. So they can start with the Public Innovation Network, like from awareness of what innovation is, and giving some skill generation, and also they can start with the Public Innovation Index, like measuring their own capabilities, and also they can start to innovate by starting a project in order to solve a problem within the institution. So in the next diagram, this is like the first process that they can use. Like they can start with the Public Innovation Network with some motivated public servants in their own institution, so they can connect each other with our help and create new capabilities with our programs. They can then identify some challenges in order to be solved, and they can generate a proposal for an innovation project, and they can give this proposal to us in order to co-create with us with the help of our agile consultancy service in order to create new capabilities and solutions, and then they can be part of the Public Innovation Index in order to measure those new capabilities in time. Next one, please. So in the same way, if they can measure their capabilities in the Public Innovation Index, they can have this new diagnosis of their matureness in capabilities in order to the people and in order to their institution strengthens. So they can work with agile consultancy team in order to address those new capabilities in the institutional level, and also with the innovators network in order to train their people. And the last one of this model is when they can start, the next one please, with the agile consultancy. So they create new solutions, and then with these new solutions, they have these new capabilities that they can, for one hand, to measure that new capability in the Public Innovation Index, and then they can be creating these new skills in the Public Innovator Network whenever they want. So, next one. So a little bit of context of our project methodology, that is the base of the learning of the capabilities that we foster to the public services can create. Next one, we have these different principles that are mainly based on service design principles, like people-centered, a multidimensional approach, co-creation, that it's mainly the main focus and principle that we apply here. Evidence-based, we have a lot of emphasis in experimentation and impact evaluation in every solution that we create, and also implementation oriented. Our definition of innovation, it's something that it's implemented and not an idea. So we foster to the evaluation and also the implementation of every new project that they create. Next one. And this is our methodology that it also is based in it's a mix between service design and agile methodology with a phase 0 of institution exploration. Then a phase 1 of the investigation of the problem, when we redefine the problem and give the innovation challenge, as you may know. Phase 2 is the development of solution. Phase 3, the development of the pilot. So, as I mentioned before, we foster to gather some evidence. So we encourage to do a pilot, a measured pilot, and phase 4 is the implementation and scaling the solution. Next one, please. And what are the main skills that we have in our team, and also what are the skills that we encourage to the people and institutions to acquire? Is mainly like this T profile, where in the axis, there are these general transversal skills that are related with the innovation process, like discover, envision, prototype testing, pilot analysis, and also facilitate and communicate. So every people should have these transversal skills, but also everyone should have this deeper knowledge of different specific areas. So right now we in the GovLab we have different consultants with these specialists, social investigations and design, behavioral science, and so on. So next one, please. So I'm going to give you a deeper focus in this connecting and developing people's capability focus that we have with our public innovator networks. Next one. So as I mentioned before, we have this innovator network that right now it's composed of more than 28,000 members of different sectors. Obviously, with civil servant, actually the 70% of the members are right now civil servants. And then we have people from academia, people from civil society, and also from private sector. There is the URL if you wanted to enter the website, and maybe you can be a public innovator network also with our network. Next one, please. What is the network value proposal? As I mentioned before, we have three main pillars as a bottom-up strategy of innovation, like a decentralized way of fostering innovation. So we connect people, we give them tools in order to learn about innovation, and also we give them space to share what they are doing, and also we share what we are doing to the network. Next one, please. So why we put a lot of effort in this? Because we can maybe only have the consultancy area, but we put a lot of effort also in this area, mainly because in the measurement that we have with the Public Innovation Index, we have seen that like in 2022, more than 60% of the innovation come from the public servants. So when we ask where was the base, where the idea came from, institutions said that they came from within the public servants. So it's very important to us that the public servants have their necessary tools and skills in order to those ideas came to light. You know? Next one, please. So we have different programs in the public innovation, like services, in order to this network to grow and to work together. In terms of learning, we apply a learning by doing approach in mainly two dimensions, agility dimension and also collaboration. In terms of agility, so we have an application focus, like the content is designed to be applied to a real problem that they are facing right now. We have this focus on speed and flexibility of every course of every workshop that we create, so the participant can integrate in short period of time the learning. And in terms of collaboration, we're emphasizing horizontal learning, that they can learn from each other, and also teamwork. Like the design of this instance required that the participants were able to mobilize people in their own organizations also. Next one. Well, in terms of some programs of this network, first of all, we have the learning agenda. And the learning agenda consists in digital activities, like digital workshops that are being carried out all Thursdays. All Thursdays, we have these digital activities like this one, you know, where we connect like 200 people in average There are sometimes we have more than 500 people connected, depending on what issue. And in this area, we have different keynotes of people not only in Chile but outside Chile, giving some tools. It's a very tool focus. Maybe I can speak myself well here, but we foster that every speaker put efforts in give them some applied tool in order to they can use it in their work. And next one, please. Too much. Yeah. We also have a structured program to certificate people in facilitation of innovation skills. So we have a program with 3 levels: initial, intermediate, and advanced, where they get trained by us directly and be part of our network of facilitators. So this one is called the route of facilitation for change. And last year we trained 250 people, and we have like more than 500 people trained in the last years. So it's a big program, big program that that we not only create people with new skills in the public services, but also it's like a network within the network for us, with people more trained. So when we have when we need big instances with a lot of facilitators, like so we ask help for this network in order to help us as a government lab team. Next one, please. We have every year, like in November or December, we have a public innovation meeting. That is this annual summit that we have in order to collaborate in person with every person of the network. So maybe I can extend the invitation for you if you can be part of this meeting also. The invitation is open. Next one, please. We have a specific program also that is called Communities in Action. When we put our platform, an open space that they can be part of a community based on a topic. Right now we have communities in open government, digital transformation of the state, health, user experience services, I can remember another, but those communities, we give them the space and the tools, and we help them to create some activity plan, some strategic plan in order to work together to create capabilities and also to create solutions to problems. We have also here a toolkit that there's the link, but you need to be part of the network. So we create this toolkit in order to they can create their own communities within their services. Next one, please. And the last service that we created for this Public Innovators Network is the Public Innovation School that we launched a month ago. So this is a virtual school with more than 50 videos about innovation. So it's a flexible platform that they can create their own route of knowledge in terms of public innovation. And we have already like more than 4,000 people that in the last month that already took our different courses. So we're very glad that we created this, and we hope that we can also foster new maybe relationships and alliances with different institutions in order to give more content to this new school. Next one, please. So finally, what have we learned with our network in the last years? Next one. Well, first of all, in order to scale the network, it was necessary to transform it into a digital service. In the first years, we were mainly doing services in person, but obviously, if you want to scale it, you have to go digital. That that pushes a lot of that give us a lot of pressure because we don't have a lot of resources in digital infrastructure. But right now we have a very strong platform in order to let them to share and to create. And also we have, as you may see, different activities and kinds of services in order to help and to diversify the different kinds of members that we have. Next one, so second one, we learned that in order to develop capabilities of innovation, it was necessary to address useful and practical contents. Instead of big keynotes and theoretical, we have a very applied approach. So the people want us and also ask us for to have this very applied content always. So that is our main approach. Next one, the third conclusion. This network finally meets the demand for an horizontal, voluntary, and friendly space. So this is not an institutional level. They don't need to have the approval of their bosses and the authorities in order to participate. So this is an open space, mainly focused on people and cross-learning collaboration. So this is the main focus of this network in order to grow and also to have a deeper impact in what we are looking for. And the last conclusion. Finally, as you may see, there are thousands of people, and mainly civil servant motivated and eager to innovate. Maybe an hypothesis could be the opposite. The public servant don't want to change, they want to innovate. But here in Chile, as we have seen, there's a lot of people that wanted to change, wanted to learn new tools, wanted to create problems, wanted to create solutions to their problems. Next one, please. So this chart is obviously the evidence of that. The growth that we have been experiencing in 5 years, it has been tremendous, So we are very proud of the people here in Chile, and we are proud of, obviously, of the people here in the government lab in order to motivate this network, to give this sustained growing time. Thank you. I hope I can be, I try to be to fit in time, but I not be able to. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to step in now. Hi, everybody. Apologies for showing up a little bit late, but I wanted to thank Orlando and Justin for sharing their work with us. And Orlando, it's okay that you went over. It's such an ambitious and really, thorough approach to network building that I think it was worth spending a little bit of extra time with your presentation. So now we have about 20 minutes to talk and ask questions to Orlando and to Justin. And then we also have a question for you. So if you could go to the slides, you can start dropping in any questions you have either in the chat or in the slides, wherever you feel more comfortable. What sorts of curiosities are coming up for you from what we just heard from Justin and Orlando? And there's the link to the slides in the chat. So you're welcome to, type directly there or in the chat. Maybe I'll start with a question just to seed the discussion. For each of you, what has been kind of the most surprising element of doing this work?
I'll hop in. Surprising, maybe. It's not surprising that as elected officials change, that priorities shift and, administrative turnover happens. But it still continues to surprise me that demonstrated resident impact either struggles in that political dynamic or hasn't been framed or publicized in a way to be protected against political change, that we haven't figured out a way to sort of secure the way of working in a standard way that where it would be just as appalling for a new elected official to remove innovation capacity as it would be grass mowing or sanitation work.
Yeah. Interesting, Justin. I think, Orlando, your team has really survived a lot of political transitions at the highest level. I'm wondering kind of what do you think the factors have been to be able to sustain this work?
Difficult one. And obviously, it's difficult because this is on record, No. No. So first of all, very seriously, as a government lab in the central government, we should be aware of the political view that it's governing us, So we have put a lot of efforts in measuring impact and also to co-create and achieve some projects that are in the main agenda of the government, but projects that obviously are based on real problems, real issues that should be addressed with innovation. So that was our main focus, and also what the focus that authorities wanted to us to give them. But in every moment that we pass, we have to put a lot of effort in that. And these services, like the Public Innovation Network, is one thing that, let me be clear with this, is not as sexy to the officials, to the authorities, as the projects and the impact of the projects, you know. So we put a lot of efforts ourselves in the network, but without the necessary sponsorship or our own authorities. So we should keep our authorities satisfied with our projects and our impact, and we keep ourselves satisfied with our network and the building capabilities. So we've been able to cross these different governments, mainly putting ourselves in the service of the agenda in terms of innovation. And that's the main idea.
Yeah. Thank you, Orlando and Justin. Randy has a question that I think he can say more easily than write. So Randy, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Francesca. Amazing presentations. Thank you both so much. I think, Justin, you touched on it towards the end of your presentation where you began speaking to sort of alignment with mission and purpose or something to that effect. And I'm curious, appreciating kind of the nature of how innovation teams and work may be positioned within a public organization. I imagine often the opportunity or need for innovation is prompted by a problem or an identified need of some kind. And I'm curious, both intentionally and as an outcome of the demonstrated value that you've created, the degree to which the application of the same innovation frame is being embraced at a meta level, as in like for the design of the whole organization, understanding the optimization of municipal government for purpose and the way we direct budget, decision-making, priorities, et cetera, based on a real connected normative view of what we're trying to accomplish in practice, not limited to a department or issue or need. Anyway, anything you might have to say, expanding on what you started to say, Justin, or yourself, Orlando, would be much appreciated. Love your perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the question, Randy. I think I feel like that is one of the next hurdles to take on. I mean, I think as a part of what we're thinking about with I-teams and also in our training programs, what we saw from those cohorts, and then also the ability to kind of like reflect on the past dozen years or so, was that there were a number of things that unlocked the ability to take risk and be ambitious and build a coalition of folks willing to do that. One of the factors, not the only factor, but one of the factors is when we just started with a problem, there were, depending on the local context and the sort of funding context as well, there were a number of innovation teams or folks doing the innovation training work that really like didn't aim for big change, that there was sort of a pretty low ceiling on what they felt they could address in that problem frame. And so one of the things we've worked a lot on over the last year in both sides of the program, and like we're testing it for the first time right now, so who's to say if it will change things, but is can we, before we get into problem framing, have a moment to find like an inspiring mission that can spur government to change how it works across departments. It can spur partnerships or unlock thinking about partnerships that may have seemed hard to do or impossible before. And so to zoom out a step and kind of use narrative and mission work as coalition building tools to then hopefully increase ambition and impact. I think that to your point about how folks work across departments, I mean, we've seen on a case-by-case or project-specific basis that has been a huge value in our teams over time. And it's a real intentionality in this new group of 25 teams. Like we have said, we ask cities in the US to submit an application for this I-team that's working on the intersection of climate vulnerability and Black wealth equity. And as you can well imagine, what ended up happening is that a number of cities either had their sustainability director or their equity officer fill out the application and submit. And so you immediately got a response that said, we want an intersectional approach, and you got a siloed answer. And so one of the program requirements actually is that the I-team can't report to either one, but instead must report in some sort of way where it can work across those offices or other relevant offices like workforce or economic development, right? And so we're trying to start to demonstrate with these grant programs ways to restructure. But to your point, Randy, like we're not influencing breaking apart the budget to get to like how a resident experiences service delivery rather than how a department or agency is funded to do the work. I'm not sure the special effect that just happened on my screen, but we'll speak to another department about the special effects. But yeah, I hope that helps. You know, we're trying to influence it a bit, but I think that institutional level change where really budget changes is sort of on the next horizon.
Well, so some ideas that I can share in terms of cross collaboration within department or also with institution. In our public innovation index, actually the less developed capability is collaboration with other institutions and also with the ecosystem like civil society, universities. So that's the main issue here. So we are putting a lot of efforts in order to grow that. So when we think about innovation in us and with the experience of working in a lot of projects, right now, maybe the same as Justin said, we enforce to the people when we are starting to work in some project with the institution that they should create a team, like a work team with people of all areas within the institution. Because based on this principle that I mentioned that was implemented oriented, we know that if we don't put the necessary people of the different areas like IT, legal, administrative, finance, in the first stage of the project, like to be aware of what the problem is, we will not be able to implement any solution that we create, because in the last moment, those people will intervene and say, this is not possible.
Classic.
So this is classic, no? So we don't do any project if we don't have people from the whole institution. I mean, seriously. So we create this great team. As we work also with agile methodology, at the end of every phase, we have this like demo, session where we present the intermediate result of the project to every people in the organization, like every people. So we aim to the services collaborate within the department, because if that doesn't happen, we are not able to implement the solution. So that's evidence. And in terms of interinstitutional collaboration, the GovLab has a mandatory function of, in every project that we do, also we connect the different institutions, and but with a clear method, because we also know that, like, I don't know how to say the proper word in English, but like a round table or for exploration of discussion, not always work, So we have to put these service design tools in order to create workshops, like workshop of the different institutions with a clear design of what wanted to achieve in order to be and to have this very productive collaboration, because people are used to have this discussion, these roundtables, and the same people speak, and they see that nothing comes out of it. So I think the method is the part of a GovLab or an innovation unit should be aware of, or should be the focus of that they can put in the table.
Thank you so much. I think we have, let's see, Mikhail has the question about your observation, Orlando, around if you want to scale, you have to go digital. What are the drawbacks that you notice to that approach?
Well, we are suffering some drawbacks right now of that, and obviously that strategy came out strongly in the pandemic, obviously. So in digital way, we are not able to know deeper the people. It's something that it's some kind of obvious. I don't know if you think the same. So we have this issue of not go deeper with some people in order to they can relate each other and create. So we have to put a lot of efforts also in these communities of action, as I mentioned before, in order to give them the tools and the methodology in order to connect. Like carry them with the hand, in order to create instances. Because like the first interaction that they have are very like cold. So it's difficult that they can start collaborating and mixing ideas. So we have to create, and we have put a lot of effort in that right now to create the necessary introduction, methodology, and spaces in order to they can relate each other and also work. So what?
Can I just add one observation that's bringing it up for me is I think somebody in the slides noted how the network within the network of people with kind of higher levels of training, I think you showed it in your slide, is kind of another way to scale, right? In terms of being able to kind of balance for the drawbacks of the digital scaling strategy.
Yeah, of course. So that network of facilitators was primarily people to be like innovation leaders in their institutions. But right now, it serves us like a network in order to help us to have a very like a most mature I don't know network. So they help each other, and also they help us in order to to scale our interventions also. Not only the things that happen in the network, but also our intervention. Maybe we are right now doing some project that we need to test in the whole country. So we ask them to test with the people there. So that's how they help also.
That's
So
really
great question.
really interesting. So I want to shift to the question that we have for all of the participants here. And, you know, we've just seen two really robust examples of network building. And as Lily noted in the chat, you know, it's just that these networks are quite vast and that they've, you know, had quite a bit of longevity. We want to think together now on, you know, what do we need our network conveners to be doing for us? What are the needs that you all have that are kind of bubbling up for you that you think networks could support, the types of networks that Justin and Orlando have just shared with us. So we'd love to hear from you. I think just speak up. There's not that many, you know, there's about 15 of us on this call. So we'd like to hear from you. If you raise your hand, I can call on you, or you can also just drop your thoughts and observations into the slides. What are your thoughts?
I'll give it a crack, Francisca. Kia ora koutou katoa, everyone. I'm based in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you, Justin and Orlando, for sharing. I've had similar experiences here, working inside government, and I wonder, so I'm not representing anyone here, so I can speak freely. If I zoom out as much as my brain is able to, I sometimes wonder if you know, us as public sector innovators, or whatever we want to call ourselves, we're sort of like a deliberately planted virus inside a system, right? And we get the opportunity to sort of play and stretch the boundaries a little bit, but at some point the system is going to tell us, here's as far as you can go, right? And now we want you to put some metrics in place. We want you to standardize. We want you to work in this acceptable way, which is counter to why we were originally asked to do some stuff. So there's a challenge with the, I'm going to go out and say it, and certainly from my perspective, the westernized structures that we've put in place, the capitalist system we're working within, and that's at a global scale. And so we get to these points where it's scaling may not be the thing, but it's sort of deconstructing the existing and presenting some options for where we want to go. And that's really difficult for an existing system to deal with. So to your question, Francisca, I think some of the network opportunities is to carve out a little bit of space between sectors, not in the private, not in academia, not in public sector, not squarely in community, but the intersect of all of those. And if there's an opportunity to come together in that little wedge of light and work with all of the above, probably from, again, my perspective as a, whatever I want to call myself, designer, I'm squarely rooted in community and community needs of people. Institutions are simply representations of people. So if there's a network opportunity there, that would be worthwhile. And of course, that's difficult with funding structures and so on and so forth. People will want to come in and control. I think that's an issue for me. Apologies for the long response.
I think that was really insightful, and thank you. Appreciate that. observation. Anybody else? See, Randy, you dropped something into the chat. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, just thinking about the nature of the work being done and how mature and well developed it is, I see complementarity in some of the work that we're doing with municipalities and others in our network. And I'm just curious, from the organization's perspective, if there is an eye to scaling the work, whether, you know, beyond national boundaries or the specific mandate of the organization, if that might happen through formal collaboration, or if there's just something more purpose-oriented that might lead to thinking about how the work could be scaled beyond the mandate of the organization, if that's of interest to, you know, parties in different places in the world, or who serve different organizations that may benefit from some of the capability and learning that's happened so far. Perhaps it's just not on the radar as something that's, or hasn't been a focal point to this point, as something to I guess build as part of the design of your programming and services. But curious what either of you may have to offer. Thank you.
I think we actually, thank you, Randy, for that. I think we'll hold that. And I'm going to hand it over now to Stefan, who also leads a really, you know, a really ambitious network that's had an important level of longevity as well. So Stefan, for your final thoughts on this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just a few comments and thinking that came to my mind. When I hear you, Justin, and you, Orlando, I feel really connected to what you say. Justin, the reason why is that we were part of the innovation team's partners. So we were part of these incredible international networks of cities from US, from Israel, from France. So I don't have the time to mention all the outputs and the values being part of this. Today I'm in Metz, which is one of the cities who get the support from iTeams years ago. And the lab is growing and the activity is growing. So my question or my comment would be on the role of international networks on mobilization. How can we maintain this and even develop it, especially in this period where we know the geopolitical situation, the tense of coming back to national thinking and leaving the international connections, which is so rich, apart. So my question or my thinking is, how can we make sure that we maintain this level of networks, because we need it? I think we only exist here in France as an organization because you exist as a network, because you're doing this in your country, etc. So we are totally part of this. But the question is, how can we go further? How can we organize a stronger conversation at the international level? I remember, Orlando, when your colleagues who were the founders of the GobLab in June visit us, saying, hey, we plan to create a lab. And we found fantastic that people in Chile came to France and get this and want to have this conversation. And I mean, in a way, it's a miracle. So how do we maintain it and develop it in this moment where we know how difficult it is to develop this kind of activities? You know how difficult is the political situation here in France. So if we don't have this kind of networks, we won't be able to maintain this. How do we also shift from the exchange of practices to things that maybe are more ambitious? maybe like we do in this network, like collective learning. But maybe tomorrow, maybe we would need you to handle same issues in different cities, in Chile, in US, in France, like kind of mission innovation project, you know. So how could we go further in this direction? How do we deal with the difference of language, of cultures, because we know how difficult it is to, and how do we fit in a more cultural perspective, because things are not the same in France as in US, as in Canada, and so on. Another question is, how do we articulate international, national, and regional networks on mobilization? Maybe there is a need for more multi-governance activities there, so that we connect all these networks together. We try hard, national people here in France, to get part into international program, but we know we need to do this. So yeah, my first comment would be we need these kind of networks, especially now, but we need to develop it and to go further. And I wanted also to mention, Orlando, how interesting I see you work, and I know the GovLab for long, but I see now that you are very you don't do network for networks. You don't do mobilization for mobilization. You've got strategies, and this is something I like in your work, that you've got clear theory for change. You've got clear strategies. You don't. People see that if they are part of your programs, of your networks, they won't lose their time. They won't waste their time, and I like it. And I think that maybe one thing that we can do, if we want to improve the way we create mobilization or network, is to be more aware of why we do that. Why do we need mobilization? Do we need mobilization to develop new projects or programs? Do we need mobilization to enlarge our communities? For instance, there is something we do in our program, is to create mirror groups. We've got partners in our programs that sometimes it's cool to open the conversation to other partners who don't have enough money's involvement, but they want to be part of it. So we create what we call mirror groups. It's a way to open up the conversation to other people. How could we use mobilization to infiltrate organization? How can we use mobilization to train future partners, allies? So I really like the idea that we need to be more strategic in the way we build mobilization, because there is also this risk of mobilization as a mean, and I think it is not. And we know that one of the most precious thing we have in public activities is time. People don't have time. And we need to use it as much as we can. So yeah, just a few comments and ideas to the end of this conversation, of this great conversation.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And I'm going to hand it now over to Lindsay for the final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be brief. I'm feeling so full. Like that was. I had high expectations of you all, and they've been vastly exceeded. I always love learning about all of your work, and to me this like really sings as a potential place for us to do more collective work together. So thank you all for being here. Quick thing is just we have one more session, Courage, in exactly 2 weeks. Different Zoom link, but otherwise same. 2 weeks from now, same time, and Payvance just dropped the link in. So please join us as we come to some sort of ending. We're going to figure out how that's going to look. It'll be messy and enjoyable, I'm sure. So we look forward to seeing you there. And thank you so much, Justin and Orlando, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.